Hello everyone, I'm Brad and welcome back to Watch, Rate, Heart. And this is Friday, which means it's time for the watch list. This is where I discuss the films I've watched and my feelings about them. This week, I'm going to review all the films from the Once Upon a Time in China franchise. I bought the entire series from the Criterion Collection a while back and wanted to dive into it. Now, I figured now is as good a time as any to give these a shot. Then, when I'm finished reviewing all the films, I will rank them from best to worst. How will I rank them? Well, there's only one way to find out. Let's kick it. Once Upon a Time in China from 1991, starring Jet Li and directed by Tsui Hark. It has a Letterboxd score of 3.7 out of 5 and a Rotten Tomatoes score of 90% fresh. And I gotta be honest with you, I didn't know really what to expect from this film. I thought this was going to be a more serious film than I was led to believe. But what I wasn't expecting is just how funny and goofy this film was, only to be suddenly surprised with some of the serious parts that happen. I think both work well as long as you don't treat the serious stuff too seriously. But it's fine. It doesn't really hurt the film all that much. I think the one thing you have to mention is the fight choreography, which is really good in the film. Some of the stunts are really well done, and some of the fight scenes are really fun. Just the fight scenes themselves are really fun, especially involving Jet Li, which I kind of thought was going to be most of the film, but apparently it's not. But okay, that's cool. I still liked it. Let's get into a couple of my negatives on this. I think there's way too many subplots in this film. I think that some of them could have been cut. One of the subplots I wish they would have put more into, though, was the conflict of modernizing China. I think there could have been more interesting things to discuss and go into when it came to the modernization of China and what was going on at that time. But they kind of went into a surface level with it, which is perfectly acceptable. I also think the film is a touch too long, but not terribly so. The film is about 2 hours and 14 minutes. And I think that 15 minutes could have been cut from the film and it would have been just fine. But it's not that I was bored watching it. It was just like, as I mentioned earlier, there's way too many subplots going on. And I wish it could have centered more on Jet Li and his character. And honestly, the more I think about it, there is a wide stretch of time, I think in the third act, where you do not see Jet Li at all. And that was kind of the part that I was a little with. But overall, I like this film. This was entertaining. This is a very good time, and the fight choreography is really good in it. I'm going to give Once Upon a Time in China 3.5 stars out of 5. All right, so let's get into what the Letterboxd community thinks about this film. Let's start with Robert, who gives it 3 stars. He says it's a little long, a little disjointed, but when Jet Li is kicking ass, that's worth the price of admission. Some of the best ladder fighting you'll ever see. I didn't know there was a lot of films with ladder fighting, but yeah, absolutely. I actually 100% agree with Robert here. I would give it a higher score, but what can you do? Let's go into the next one, which is Cinema Void. He also gives us 3 stars, and Cinema Void says, "Today I publicly denounced Jet Li and Tsui Hark for assault and battery. I felt physically attacked by so many subplots." That's good. He's not wrong either, but good. That's funny. I gotta give him that. Good one, Cinema Void. And then for the last one, we have a 5-star review from Justin DeClo. I'm sorry if I got your last name wrong, Justin. He gives it 5 stars and a heart, and he says, "I love this movie and all its broad themes, messy storytelling, and endless fight scenes. Tsui Hark taps into a vein of pure cinematic bliss." I kind of agree. Can I just say one thing, though, that I found really funny about this film? Just how they represented the British and America in this film. I thought it was hilarious how they represented us in this. I mean, we were bloodthirsty, sure, but I think just how they characterized the characters in this film. I think the tiger guy and the main American guy, I thought was just uproariously hilarious. Let's continue with the second film, which is Once Upon a Time in China 2, once again starring Jet Li and Donnie Yen, directed by Tsui Hark. This has an overall score of 3.8 out of 5 on Letterboxd, and it has a 93% fresh rating on Rotten Tomatoes. Now, this is going to be a simpler review. Just take everything I said that the first film did right, and this film did it better. Basically, that's it. The film stays more humorous than serious, and is all for the better in this one. It goes into China modernizing and the public's feeling about it. In fact, the main antagonist is very much against it. That's the main drive of the film, which is what was missing for me in the first film, so this film takes care of that. In terms of improvements, the look of the film, from the way it's shot to how the camera work is done, is a big improvement. I didn't think the first film's look was that bad, but after watching this, I think the second one has better colors, and just the way that the camera work is done is much better. I think the fight scenes are once again excellent, and the final fight scene between Jet Li and Donnie Yen is actually really good. In fact, I think the fight scenes in this one are better than the ones in the first one by far. I'm thinking about it right now. Is there one that's better in the first one? And I can't really think of one. If you feel differently in the comments, let me know. And the film keeps a good time and never feels dull or boring. This is just below 2 hours, but everything in the film completely justifies its length. This was a great movie. I really enjoy this. So I'm giving this 4 stars out of 5, and it gets to the heart as well. Great movie. Really fun. Love the fights. Love the camera work. A big improvement from the first film. Even though I really liked the first film, the second one was much better. So 4 stars out of 5 for me for Once Upon a Time in China 2. Alright, now let's get into the Letterboxd reviews, and we have Rachel Rhodes here, who does not give it a rating, but gives it a heart, and she says, with the addition of Donnie Yen, this may out-action the first and be the better movie. She also says, another viewing of the trilogy will have to be done again soon. Maybe. So let's go to the second review, which is again from Justin Declos. He gives it 4 stars, and he says, it doesn't have the sheer excess of the first, but it does have Donnie Yen, and Jet Li fights the concept of mainline China. And for the third review, I have Divine here. Divine gives it 4.5 out of 5 stars and a heart. And Divine says, Jet Li beats 50 men with just an umbrella, and that barely cracks the top 5 of wildest shit to happen in this. Truly generational stuff on display. I completely forgot about that. Like, the fight scenes are really good, and I completely forgot about that one scene. Oh, man. I guess it's another thing I have to point out with this film. Each and every subsequent fight scene is better than the last with this one. So, yeah, definitely a great movie. I agree with Divine. Let's move forward to Once Upon a Time in China 3, once again starring Jet Li and directed by Tsui Hark. Letterboxd has this at a score of 3.4 out of 5, and it holds a rating of 63% fresh on Rotten Tomatoes. So let's get into the positives. I think this is solid in terms of look and the pace of the film. Again, this is about a little bit under 2 hours, so I think that's like a perfect runtime for this type of film. I don't think this film looks as good as the second one, but it looks good enough, I would say. I think the sets look good. I think the way that the film is shot is well done. There are some pretty interesting scenes when it comes to camera work on some of the fight scenes. Speaking of the fight scenes, there's more fight scenes in this film. Speaking of fight scenes, there are more of them in this film. I just don't think they're as good as the ones from 1 and 2, especially 2. Because the fight scenes in 2, especially the ones with Donnie Yen, were really good. But in this one, I think they're fine. I don't think they're bad fight scenes. They're just not as compelling or as exciting as they were in the first 2 movies. I think the one thing that this movie may improve a little bit more on this is comedy. I think the comedy is actually not bad in this. I especially like the language comedy with Wong and 13th Aunt. When 13th Aunt is trying to teach English to Wong, and he's just messing it up completely. I thought that was kind of funny. What I don't like, the main villain of the film. I mean, there's technically 2 or 3 villains. There's technically 2, I would say. And both of them are not really that interesting. But the main villain, which is the leader of that one group, is really annoying. I just do not like him at all. I think he's just obnoxious to a point where I just couldn't stand seeing him on screen. If I'm being honest, I'm just less impressed overall with the film compared to the other 2. Take that from stunts, from acting, from the way the film looks, and to the flow of everything. I wasn't bored at all throughout this film, but I wasn't really excited to see what happens next. I'm like, oh my god, what's the next stunt I'm going to see? I just was like, okay, this is fine. This is decent. And that was basically it with this one. Overall, I'm going to give Once Upon a Time in China 3 out of 5. It's a good movie. It's enjoyable. It's definitely one of those, if you want to watch more of this type of film and you really like the first 2, you should definitely check out the third. But it's really not as good as the first 2, especially 2. 2 is really good. And this is a pretty big step down from there. I think the way to really put it with this film is, it's good, but not as good as the last 2. We're talking about looks, fights, camera work, everything. This is good, but not as good as the last two. So again, 3 stars out of 5 for me. All right, so let's see what the Letterboxd community thinks about this film. Sliver-Handed gives us a 3 stars and a heart, and Sliver-Handed says, slightly less grandiose in story and fighting craft than the first two, this is still a worthy entry. The newfangled camera stuff with 13th Aunt is interesting thematically, both because this is a movie and also the tension of new technology that the movies have dealt with. I will say this as well, it's not only good with that, but it's also good for the dramatic tension between Wong and 13th Aunt. That was actually not bad. The romance is not bad in this film. There is a lot more wire work in this one, and while it's a crutch at times, it is used very well. The Fei Hung versus Clubfoot fight in particular has some great wire work. The actor doing Clubfoot in general is a great action talent. He says the line dance stuff is a fun spectacle, and it's some of the most fun and light stuff they have done for this film. But he does say that the fights could have been better in this film, and that could have got him another star if they were better. But they're solid nonetheless. Let's get into another review. This is from Steve Dingle, who gives it 4 stars and a heart. And Steve says, pretty amazing movie. Love the fight scenes, especially at the end. Let's go into our third one right here. This is from Edwards97. Edwards97 gives us 3 stars, and he says, entertaining but weaker than the first two. Thought some of the wire fu was a bit meh. Kind of agree on that one, actually. And this last one is from Regin, who gives it 4 stars and a heart. And Regin says, not as well structured and doesn't feel as seriously made as the first two, but still a lot of fun. It's the Transporter 3 of the franchise, or like the equivalent of the Lone Wolf and Cub movies. Those are 2 references I don't get because I haven't seen any of those films. I should probably see the Lone Wolf and Cub films at some point. Maybe I should see the Transporter ones as well. We'll see. Moving on, we have Once Upon a Time in China 4, but this one has some changes. Gone is star Jet Li and director Sao Hark, and in their place is Vincent Zhao and Yuen Bun. It currently has a Letterboxd score of 3.0 out of 5, and it does not have a Rotten Tomatoes score. And I think the one thing I have to point out with this film is this is a huge step down from the first 3 films. The first thing that I have to point out is the stars are missed in this film. Not only is Jet Li gone, but Rosamund Kwan, who plays Aunt 13, is also gone. You have Vincent Zhao as Wong Fei Hung, who is good in action sequences, but just doesn't have the presence that Jet Li has. As far as Aunt 13, who is played by Rosamund Kwan, she's also pretty much missed in this film. So who replaces 13th Aunt is, of course, 14th Aunt, who is played by Jean Wang. And I gotta be honest, I really don't have much of an opinion on her. She's not in it all that much. She doesn't do anything all that interesting. She's just a placeholder for 13th Aunt, so it was kind of pointless. In terms of the action, this film is way too reliant on wire fu and stunts. But other than that, the action is okay. I mean, I wasn't really bored watching the action sequences. It's just that they flew around more than they did in Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, but without the artistry, I would say. So it's fine, but it's nowhere near as good as the other 3 films. But the one big problem I had with this is way too campy. It tries too hard to be silly and funny, and then when the ending happens, it hurts the actual ending. So the comedy doesn't work, and then when it starts to get serious, it just does not mesh well at all. The looks of the film is also hampered. It doesn't really have the feel of the other films. I think when it comes to the color, I think the film does look better than the other 3. It doesn't look as grainy. But when it comes to sets and the scenes that are being constructed, I don't think they're anywhere near as interesting or as captivating as the first 3. I'll put it this way, though. I can see some people liking this if they enjoy campy films. This is a film that is very unserious in a lot of the sequences in the film. There are extended sequences where Wong's proteges are doing all sorts of silly things. There's a sequence where they are in drag, trying to infiltrate the Red Lantern Society, which it wasn't great either, to be absolutely honest. But if you can watch this movie and enjoy the campiness, enjoy the unseriousness of it, I can see some people enjoying this film in a kind of a so bad it's kind of good sort of way. But if you really like the first 3 films, this is going to be a very hard crash down. As a rating, I'm going to give it 1.5 stars out of 5. I'm not going to say it's terrible, but it is a very big step down from the other 3. The action sequences are fine, I will say. Again, they rely too much on wire fu. But when compared to Jet Li, I think Vincent Zhao's performance is poses as Wong doesn't have the gravitas that you would expect. In fact, I kind of think the film tries to de-emphasize Wong in this film, and I think it's to hide the fact that Zhao doesn't do such a great job as the character. Hopefully the fifth one is better, but I am not going to count on it. So, again, 1.5 stars out of 5 for me for Once Upon a Time in China 4. All right, so let's see what the Letterboxd community thinks of this film. We have, once again, Justin Declos. He gives it 3 stars, and he says, Once Upon a Xerox in China, a Coke Zero variant of a beloved series. Tastes fine, but it isn't the same. Once it gets going, there's a lot of action, but I was surprised it was much more abstract than usual, with Yuen Bun choreographing things with an emphasis on wire-assisted pinball physics. It doesn't quite work, but the sheer volume of it makes it go down easy. I think the people who will like this film will probably have that take on it as well. So let's get into the next one. This is a small one from Paco Salazar 42. He gives it 3 stars, and he says, White Lotus Sun or Red Lantern Daughter, kind of a repeat of 3 and elements of 2. Vincent Zhao is no Jet Li, obviously, but he's fine. And then we have our last review from Taylor Leverage. He gives it 2 stars, and Taylor says, there's a guy whose signature move is punching horses in the face in slow motion. Yeah, that's how unserious this film is. And honestly, I like the horse punching guy. I thought he was funny. He continues, not many franchises survive replacing their lead actor unscathed, and this one isn't any different. Jet Li dips from the series to be replaced by Vincent Zhao, who is serviceable but not a legend. It's his charisma and delivery, not his physical ability, that's lacking, and I 100% agree on that. And he'll conclude here, if the film doubled down on all its ridiculousness, it might have been a triumph. It's definitely a so bad it's good film, in part because of how it contrasts with the previous films in the franchise. We've got 2 more to go. Let's discuss Once Upon a Time in China 5. Vincent Zhao is back as Wong Fei-hung, and Sue Hark returns as director. This has a Letterboxd score of 3.2 out of 5, and this does not have a score at Rotten Tomatoes. Basically, on 5, everything has improved from the last film. Everything from the visuals, to the fights, to the acting, to the way the shots are done. Everything is improved in this. And so much so, it's probably one of the better films of this franchise. This really strikes the right blend of comedy and drama. The film isn't as serious as I think as 1 or 2, but it's nowhere near as silly as 4. I think the way they do the comedy with specifically the students and the little things between 13th and 14th Aunt and Wong, I think is done really well in this film. I actually laughed out loud a couple times in this film. This was really funny. I think also this film has some of the best action sequences in the entire series. The hand-to-hand is very good. Again, from the 4th film, Vincent Zhao is not bad as Wong Fei-hung when it comes to action. I just didn't think he was that great when it came to acting as him compared to Jet Li. But the action is very good. But what this film also has that makes it a little bit better than most of them is the gun fu in this film. There's a lot of guns in the film. There's a lot of pistols. There's a lot of cannons as well, and I think this really improves on the action to a great degree. I really enjoy the action in this movie. This also does a great job of implementing 13th Aunt back into the film and giving purpose to 14th Aunt. I knew that Rosamund Kwan was coming back for this film, but I was really afraid it was going to be one of those things where, oh, how was 14th Aunt? Oh yeah, she went here, I don't know, bye, and then they were just never going to talk about her again. I think the way that they implemented 13th and 14th Aunt and Wong with this comedic kind of drama that's going on, I thought that was very well done. And it also made me hope that we'd see 14th Aunt in the final film. I'm doubting we will, but I thought the way they handled her character was very good. I also think the villains are great. There's the main pirate that is in the film. There is the undead father pirate, which I thought was kind of odd, but actually kind of cool. And then there is this female pirate in the film that I thought was really cool. I actually want to see more of her in this, but sadly, she's one of the henchmen, so it's all you can do on that one. The other thing I need to mention is the visuals. There is a big improvement on the visuals compared to the 4th film. The way the shot selection is, the camera work, and the set design, all a big improvement on this one. That was one of the big problems I had with 4. I don't think I discussed very much, is that the film didn't exactly look great. It looked fine color-wise, but didn't look as good as the other films when it came to sets and the space that the characters are playing. As for rating, I'm going to give this 4 stars out of 5 with a heart. I think this film was a lot of fun. I really liked the action. And when it came to the characters and the story and the plot, I had no problem with this film at all. This was a lot of fun. Even Vincent Zhao as Wong was pretty damn good in this. Now, I really think they catered to Zhao's strengths than just have him be Jet Li in this, which I think was the best thing for him. I think they didn't try to make him look as serious as Jet Li in this, which I think that trade-off was a great idea. But everything else in the film, from the characters to the combat to the way the film looks, great improvement from 4, so much so that I think it's one of the better films of this franchise. So 4 stars out of 5 with a heart for Once Upon a Time in China 5. Alright, so let's get into the Letterboxd reviews. Once again, I'm going back to Justin Declos. He gives it 3.5 stars out of 5 and a heart. And he basically asks, how do you freshen up the Once Upon a Time in China series? Please give them a bunch of guns and have them take on pirates, of course. This is essentially what this movie is. It feels a little like an episode of a TV series, but there's still that Suhark magic with him in the director's chair, packed with insane gravity-defying action shot with wide-angle lenses under beautiful atmospheric light. Yes, absolutely yes. Absolutely 100% agree with him. Let's go again with Paco Salazar 42. He gives it 3 stars out of 5. So basically, Paco says Vincent Zhao is a little bit more at home as Wong, but he also felt that it was fun with the gunplay and the John Woo flair and the pirate angle in this film. So he enjoyed it. 3 stars from him. Let's do this next one. This is someone who did not like the film. This is Call's Apartment. Call's Apartment gives it 2 stars. And Call says, I'm an apologist for part 4, which I think people whiffed on, but this one straight up sucks. Yeah, agree to disagree there, buddy. And then the last one is from Adam Bernstein. He gives it 4 stars and a heart, and he says, sure, Jet Li is missed, and it lacks a historical sweep of the early films, but still a Suhark-directed pulpy action romp full of pirates and gun fu, aka a total blast. And I agree with you, Adam. And finally, we have the last film in the series, Once Upon a Time in China and America. Jet Li returns as Wong Fei-hung, and this film is directed by Sammo Hung. It has a Letterboxd score of 3.1 out of 5, and it does not have a Rotten Tomatoes score. The first thing I should say is think of this film as like a what if. Don't think of it as like a continuation of the series. Just think of it as like a side story or a what if along those lines. Let's get into some of the pluses. I think the action, for the most part, is pretty good in this film, but while I'm saying that, I don't like how Sammo Hung directed those scenes. The camera is way too close to the action. One of the things I liked about the action when it came to the Once Upon a Time in China series is that they pulled the camera back, so you get to see everything in frame. The movements, the body of the people who are doing the kung fu, and how they're performing those stunts so well. In this film, I think the direction is much more westernized because they concentrate on camera cuts and close-up shots and stuff like that. The story is also kind of goofy, but it also tries to add racism drama, and it has pretty mixed results. I just treat it as like a goofy side story to not be taken seriously at all. That's how I watch this film. To be honest, the film is too serious to really be all that funny, but it's also too goofy to be taken all that seriously. And yet I find the film has its charms in a weird way. I found the film entertaining, and I found it kind of funny in spots, but I can't just take it seriously as a continuation of the series. In fact, I will just consider this as a film that is really not part of the series at all. It's just something that was kind of like a weird side project that you can pretty much ignore. I would say only watch this if you've watched the other 5 and you're really curious about the 6th one, but other than that, I think you could ignore it. I'm going to give this one 2.5 stars out of 5. It's fine. The action's good, but I don't like the direction. The story is kind of meh, but it's goofy enough where I am not too offended by it or I'm not bored by it. I'm just watching it and going, what are they doing here? Huh. Okay. And honestly, that's really all I can say. The action's fine, but I don't think this was really all that necessary of a film to create, so I don't even know why they did it. But again, 2.5 stars out of 5 for me for Once Upon a Time in China and America. Alright, so let's go into the Letterboxd community, see what they think about this film. We have 2 reviews here. The first one is from Matt Clary. He gives it 2 stars, and he says, racist Western kung fu that's also kind of woke? I don't know. I don't know either. What is woke nowadays anyway? But okay, sure. He's kind of got a point there, actually. And finally, we have a review from Zane Simon. Zane Simon gets a 2.5 stars, and he says, extremely messy. Sammo Hung is really pushing everyone to their limits, trying to craft a tale of the American West, complete with stereotypical cowboys, Indians, and frontier justice. The action is very fun, but everything else left me shaking my head and saying, this is not a great idea. Jet Li doesn't have the range to play an amnesiac, let alone one who thinks he might be Native American. Concerned, joyful, that's about his limit. That wouldn't be a huge problem if Hung could keep the story focused, but central characters drift away over a meandering middle third. A 2-star out of 5 for personal enjoyment. At this point, I stopped watching. There are issues with this movie, and I think both reviewers are right on this. I just didn't take it seriously at all and just was like, whatever. It's like they're in the Wild West. Sure, okay. And that's kind of it with me. But I understand their feelings on that, so I can't disagree. Alright, so before I get to the ranking, let me tell you about my overall feelings in the series. I enjoyed these films. I think they were pretty fun. I think the action is actually really good. And so a lot of the films has a very good sense of humor, which I was not expecting watching the first one, but the humor got better as the films went on. I think Jet Li is amazing in this when he showcases his craft and his speed. His acting is okay, but when he is doing action is when he is the most impressive. Man, he is fast. The stories are fine as well as the side characters, but really it's the action that keeps you invested. So if you don't like the action and I don't think the characters are really going to do anything for you. I really want to say this overall. The English-speaking voices are hilariously bad. Not even just like insultingly bad, but hilariously bad. It's like they speak the words correctly, but they don't understand what they're saying, which is hilarious to me. But that's just me. Would I recommend people watching these films? Here's what I would say. Watch the first 3 films on Max. If you enjoy them, buy the box set on Criterion. I enjoyed these films. I think they were fun, but I wouldn't blind buy these unless you're really into kung fu films. If you are, then yes, go right ahead. But if you're not, I'd say give 1 through 3 a shot. And if you don't like any of them, just don't buy them. But I think they're good. I'm glad I have the series on Blu-ray myself. So before I go, let's go into how I would rank the Once Upon a Time in China series. I think the worst one overall at number 6 is the 4th film. I think this was a mess on a number of levels. And Vincent Zhao just did not fit very well as Wong Fei Hung. And there's a number of issues I had with the film, but that is easily the worst one. Number 5 is going to be Once Upon a Time in China and America. I think you can skip that if you're really not interested. It's kind of a side story. It's weird, but whatever. I'm going to put number 4 as Once Upon a Time in China 3. It's fine. It's a step down from the first 2, but the action is good, and it's the last one you see with Jet Li in China. It's good. It's not great, but I enjoyed it. So the best ones are going to be 3, 2, and 1. And the third one I would say is Once Upon a Time in China, the first one. I was a little surprised with what the film was. I thought it was going to be a lot more serious, but it kind of melded the goofiness and the seriousness pretty well. This was a much more serious film than the others, but I enjoyed it and I really liked the action. Number 2 for me is Once Upon a Time in China 5. This one was really good, I thought. I thought the way that they implemented the gun fu as well as the action, and they kind of made Vincent Zhao a little more comfortable in the role by just implementing to his strengths. I think this was a much better film than 4, and I think it's one of the better films in the 6 film series. And number 1 for me is Once Upon a Time in China 2. Honestly, I was never bored in this film. I thought it had great action. I even felt the drama was pretty good. And some of the comedy in it is very well done as well, but the action, especially with scenes with Donnie Yen, are really good. So number 1 for me is Once Upon a Time in China 2. Definitely the best one. If you find yourself not liking it after that one, you might as well just skip it. But so yeah, that is my ranking of the Once Upon a Time in China series. What is your ranking of the series? Have you seen any of them? Let me know in the comments section. And that does it for this episode of Watch Rate Heart. But before I go, let me ask you a question. Is there a film series that I should cover like I just did with the Once Upon a Time in China series? Is there a certain director whose series I should check out? I have been interested in doing Back to the Future. I haven't seen any of them yet, so that's one of them. But if there's a more artistic one, let's say there's some in the Criterion Collection that you think I should try and check out, let me know in the comments section below. And that does it for this episode. You can follow me at Letterboxd and X at WatchRateHeart. Please like and subscribe if you enjoyed it and share with your friends. I'm Brad from Watch Rate Heart. Thank you for watching, and remember, we all watch and rate movies, but you give them the heart that makes them live forever.